Good morning, everybody. To get started, just a quick apology. Normally on Thursday evenings, I do an in-depth forecast. I know a lot of you like to watch that. I didn't get a chance to do it last night. Some of the severe weather that ripped through parts of the southeast actually stranded me in Raleigh first and then in Charlotte as I tried to fly home. So I didn't get into about 3:45 this morning and just didn't have a chance to record while I was sitting in the airports. But the animation you've been watching here just kind of shows how powerful this large squall line with several embedded circulations in it was last night. And this was a substantial severe weather outbreak. The Storm Prediction Center, as we kind of showed in the last couple of reports, was all over this, but it was still one of those things where fast-moving storms, a lot of rotation. We're going to see today a lot of the damage reports coming out from this particular event. When we look at what did actually occur, this is the latest data we've got from the Storm Prediction Center. We're almost at 300 reports of severe weather last night, and each of those red dots represents one of over 45 different tornado reports. And so we'll watch this unfold today to see this particular event and how devastating it was. But again, it just illustrates that across parts of the south and southeast, this particular region is vulnerable to tornadic activity any time of the year. But what it's actually more symptomatic of is the fact that this zonal jet we've been dealing with has allowed quite a bit of warm and moist and unstable air to advance pretty far to the north. It's kept things extremely mild across the country. It's given us these truly, very dense fogs across the parts of the Midwest, upper Midwest, Great Lakes. And of course, we know what it's done to the west where the strong onshore flow has been. So if we just look back over the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation, we're just kind of adding more and more to what we've seen in the west. And there are still 3 more events coming to the west before the pattern begins to split with respect to the Pacific jet as it retracts back toward Japan. It is also important to note on these maps the places that continue to be missed, like the southern plains, getting here into parts of the Midwest, back into the upper Midwest and northern plains, and then here into the Canadian Prairie. Those are areas that have been missed. And you look back over the last 30 days and say, well, wow, what's all? Well, this was from storm systems that happened, a while ago. They put down, remember the big storm system that rolled through here that dumped all the snow, the one that followed it in this area. That's what's being reflected in this map. Since then, it's been very dry from Montana into the northern plains, the Canadian Prairie. And the dryness that we've seen in parts of the southern plains has just truly been, historic. We're talking about 30 plus days, some places almost 70 days without any precipitation down here in this very important part of our cotton belt. It's also been quite dry here in the coastal regions of Georgia, northern South Carolina, but the onshore flow that's coming to the west is continuing to just be record-setting. You can see we have climate districts here, right along the coast here, that since the beginning of the year are having the wettest start to any year, and you can see where that jet extends. But now this map really brings into contrast, since the start of the new year, the regions that have been dry on either side of it. Now, the newest drought monitor that was released yesterday, I want to do a quick comparison for you. This is one of my favorite parts of the drought monitor tool. You can do a slider bar, so I can kind of go back and forth and show you 2 different time periods. So this map here is November the 1st, when we had about 85% of the lower 48 in some form of drought, from abnormally dry to exceptional drought. As I move this over, you can see what it looks like now. So you notice if I just rock back and forth across the west, we've seen quite a bit of improvement. We see just some reorientation of the drought in the midsection of the country, but quite a bit of relief in the eastern Corn Belt in the lower Mississippi River Valley. And over in the Carolinas, down to Georgia, it's really just anchored itself right here, from the coastal regions all the way down to the kind of the Gulf Coast area in Florida. Now, with all that precipitation coming into the west, I just want to give you a quick update. Lake Oroville, since its lowest point at the beginning of December, has now increased to over 100 feet in depth. That's where a lot of this water has been going. And at 762 feet, it's still well below its full pool value of 900 feet. But this precipitation that's coming has been fantastic. I want to make an important point about this. We're about 2/3 of the way toward the average. So a lot more still needs to come. We need to see what we just saw in the last 15, 16 days happen again, but stretch it out over a few months. So we're currently sitting here, and just want to make a point. Last year, things flatlined at this point all the way through April. And we know that the jet is retracting right now and will likely stay retracted possibly for upwards of 3 weeks. And when I do record the extended long-range outlook later today, I'll explain why that's going to happen. But what we're going to be watching here is this. This is looking down on the North Pole. The colors represent the extent, speed, position of the jet. And you notice by the time we get out there through middle of next week, we've already seen the jet begin its retraction. It splits here into the Gulf of Alaska. So this just changes the trajectory from keeping that extending to all of a sudden breaking apart into kind of two pieces, and they come back together from Texas through the mid-Atlantic. So this will reorient the storms as they come into the west. This will make California drier, but this will also likely introduce some colder air that will spread east. This actually gets us back into what we would consider a more La Nina look to the pattern, by the way, even though, as I've been stating, La Nina is past its peak in terms of its influence this winter. Okay, our all hazards weather map, again, more dense fog in parts of the central United States. We have winter weather advisories out for the system exiting the East Coast today. That was the one that produced all the severe weather last night. And then we have winter storm warnings out for the Sierra Nevada, flood watches, and high wind advisories for California. To take a look at it, let's go straight to the European. So this is this morning. So again, we're watching that heavy snow here. A lot of snow squalls on the back side of this, by the way, and some snow pushing up against the Appalachian Mountains. But the next system comes into California this midday today into this evening. There you can see it. And then we're going to watch another wave come in on Saturday. The low is sitting right here off of the Oregon coast. And that one will bring better precipitation into the I-5 corridor. On Sunday, though, we're going to watch parts of the Four Corners states for this low to come through and possibly put down some heavy snow here, but eject into Colorado, develop over Kansas, and then by Monday morning into Monday midday, it's going to go basically from Colorado through Kansas into Iowa. A lot of warm air with this one, so that's why we see a very large area showing up with greens representing liquid precipitation. And I'll just going to make a statement here that I want to keep an eye on this area Monday evening just for the chance of storms. It's not really being resolved really well just yet for the risk of severe storms, but let's keep an eye on that because there will be quite a bit of warm air with this. That low then moves toward the front moves toward the Appalachian Mountains as the low curls up over the upper Midwest. And while that was going on, take a look. Here's the third system coming into California on Monday. That one comes again over the Four Corners states, and as this system moves its way to the eastern Great Lakes, the models have been resolving all week this system that comes out of southern Colorado and the Panhandle region and then moves toward Illinois and eventually Michigan right there. Now, we're pretty far out in a forecast. This is a week away from now, but it does show the potential, as you see here, for some heavier snows, maybe from the Panhandles to Kansas, part of southeastern Nebraska into Iowa, and then into Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota even as well. Again, I don't like seeing the model. You know this, the European, when it does this kind of behavior with these streaks, that represents where it's convectively active, could be some bigger storms there. So I just want you to keep a lookout for that as well. After this point, systems start coming into the northwest from that trajectory and that split flow. Okay, so chances of snow. This is where the models just continue to show on the 18th and 19th higher probability of a heavier snow band in through here, but much greater possibilities north into parts of the interior of New England and, of course, in the west. Again, this map shows the chances of getting 3 inches in the next 10 days. In terms of who's going to get rain and who's not, I just want to update this map from yesterday. Again, with these next two systems coming through, we're going to keep the Ohio and Tennessee Valley toward the Appalachian Mountains and parts of New England wetter than normal. Also in the west with the next 3 systems coming in. But as we've seen, the extent of the dry slot with each of those systems has just kept parts of the southern plains very dry. This is the probability of getting less than 1/10 of an inch of precip in the next 10 days here. Now, week 2, remember, the flow will be split, so we'll see more action doing something like this, and that's why the west coast shows drier signals. And if we do end up getting a deeper trough that comes in, we could get some upper level convergence that gives us a little drier signal for parts of the mid-south and southeast out of this. So that's something we're going to be watching for week 2. Now, the temperature pattern since really the start of the new year, the end of December through the start of the year, has been incredibly mild. We've talked quite a bit about that, but it just shows you that we have places, in parts of Canada and down here that have been averaging 15 degrees Fahrenheit above normal, 15 degrees above normal. So as we look out there, the next 5 days, still very mild in the midsection of the country, about the Canadian prairie. Day 5 through 10, this is where the pattern splits. So the mild air moves east, but we start to see some colder air coming in. And when we fully get into that split pattern, go back into a more La Nina look to the atmosphere, This is what we expect day 10 through 15. The latest GFS really starting to show significant chances of returning some really cold air. There's a polar vortex split that's happening over the next 5 days. It is not linked to this yet. It's something we could be watching into February. Keep you posted on that. From here, I also want to mention that there will be, for the first time in a while, some significantly colder air coming into Europe. It's still a couple of days away, but it will be there. And it's going to displace a lot of warm air into Russia. And this has been a region that's been very, very cold as of late. So that displacement could really upset kind of the location of the coldest air sitting over the northern hemisphere. And lastly, I just want to give you an update on South America. The models have improved rainfall again for Rio Grande do Sul. This has been an area in southern Brazil that's been in deep drought. Where the crop is finishing in central and eastern Brazil, heavier rains. And it's also brought up some of the rainfall totals in Mato Grosso, for example. That's an area that's trying to harvest its first crop of soybeans and plant the safrinha crop. So we would say that for most of Brazil, this is a very favorable forecast. Into Argentina, from Buenos Aires to Cordoba and Santa Fe, this area right in through here, the models are trying to return rain about 9 days from now to that area. Outside of that, it's going to continue to be hot and dry until that comes in. And again, that's a big if. The model's been doing that a lot, producing rain that hasn't fully manifested itself. There will be scattered storms on the heat of the day. We'll keep an eye on those on satellite, but this is the newest forecast continuing to show drought issues for Argentina, compounding with time. Okay, appreciate your attention. Again, I'll get you out that long-range outlook later on today on Friday. But with that, I'll wrap it up. Thanks.